I wonder what the things are that sort of separate California from other states or even other places in the world. Because if you look at academia around the entire world, or you look at in the entertainment industry, or you look at mainstream media, it always has a liberal bias. These are things that are based in big cities, whether it's LA, New York, London, Paris, Berlin, all of these places, big cities in general, no matter where you go in the world, they tend to lean more liberal than more rural areas and smaller towns and cities. That's just kind of a global phenomenon. I'm sure somebody has explored why that is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering what it is uniquely about California, given it wasn't always that way. I just wonder what it is that changed over the course of those few decades that it has switched so reliably to the point where people who are trying to run as Republicans essentially feel like they don't really stand a chance, and people just dogmatically vote in one way and don't even want to give the other side a chance.
Yeah. I think another factor in California is the demographics have changed pretty dramatically. At one time, I think when I was a kid, 80% of the state was white. The rest of it was so-called people of color.
Mm-hmm.
Now, roughly 40%, 45% of the state is Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
About 40% is white. 9.5% or so Asian. Only about 6.5% is black. And so the racial demographics of California have changed dramatically,
Mm-hmm.
and people who are on the of color typically vote Democrat.
Why do you think that is?
They've been taught that race and racism remain major problems in America. They've been taught that social justice is more important than crime, than schools, than jobs,
Mm-hmm.
and they're buying into it.
What do you think is going on there? Because it seems like there's some type of cognitive dissonance that goes on in these major cities where simultaneously you'll have people complaining about taxes, complaining about crime, perhaps even being victims of it themselves, complaining about homelessness, drug abuse, rampant people just strewn around the streets, complaining about, shoplifting and car break-ins, complaining about the schools and the lack of achievement, lack of reading standards, all of these things, yet they don't seem to draw a connection in their mind between their voting patterns and the policies and the results on the ground. And this seems to have been going on for many, many years. And as someone who considers himself quite logical and rational, I don't understand how that attitude can be so pervasive.
It's the $64,000 question, Zuby. And if I could answer that, you'd be talking to me from Sacramento in the governor's mansion. I think it's kind of like, again, indoctrination. I know I use that word a lot, but I think black people in particular have been taught Republicans are bad. Republicans are racist. Republicans only care about the wealthy people. Democrats are the party of social justice, the party that wears the white hat when it comes to equity. And that's what I think they've been told. I think it's changing to some extent because Donald Trump got around 8% of the black vote in 2016.
I love the fact
he got 12% in 2020.
Yeah,
20% of black men voted for him, and now it looks like almost 40% of blacks are considering voting Republican in 2024. So I think it's finally changing. Look, if you look at the quality of schools, 85% of black eighth graders nationwide can neither read nor do math at grade level. 85%. These are 13-year-old black kids, and in places like Baltimore. There are 13 public high schools in Baltimore, all located in the inner city, where 0% of kids can do math at grade level. Zero. Chicago, there are 53 government schools. That's a term I prefer rather than public schools, government schools. 53 government schools in Chicago, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Yet the Democratic Party opposes school choice, where the money follows the child rather than the other way around, so that the parents can shop around for a better school. Meanwhile, the Democrats themselves have always had their own kids in elite schools. Barack Obama did, Elizabeth Warren did, Gavin Newsom did, Joe Biden did. They all had their kids in private schools. Yet they oppose school choice for people living in the inner city. And if you look at polls of black and brown people living in the inner city, they want school choice. Yet they still vote Democrat. You tell me why. I can't think of anything more important than making sure that your kid gets a good education. And yet they're still pulling the lever for the same party that denies you the right to have school choice, even though that's what you want.
From an external perspective and someone who doesn't really have a dog in this fight, I mean, I can't vote anyway. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. As an outside observer and as a creative and entrepreneurial person, I think a lot of it is branding. I think it really comes down to branding and emotive messaging and how people feel and what their assumptions are about each party. And for better or for worse, it depends on which angle someone looks at it as it from. It seems like the left or the Democrats have been able to brand the American right or the Republicans as racist, misogynistic, fascistic, don't care about anyone but white people, a party of big business, don't care about social justice. I mean, when you look at the actual numbers and policies, all of this is bunk to me, but the branding has been so strong. And the branding of the Democrats is, hey, if you're a woman, if you're a minority, if you're a young person, if you're LGBTQ, if you're any of these categories, we're the ones for you. We're the ones who care about you. We're the ones. It's this sort of emotive messaging, which even though on an idea to idea perspective, a lot of these ideas and policies are lacking and the results are not good, but they make people feel good. They move people's hearts and emotions in a way where they go, oh, okay, that's the guy or gal I want to vote for. And simultaneously, yeah, they brand the Republicans or the conservatives as mean or uncaring or somehow hateful. And I think it's garbage, but that really seems to be what's at play. Like it's kind of a branding problem. I think that the Republican conservative side needs to get better at the branding part. And I know people don't like to think that way because they just want to win on ideas and they want to win on policies. But I just think that there's a branding problem. And there's something, I don't know exactly what it is that needs to be changed in the messaging, but something needs to be changed there because
but keep in mind,
those narratives
the messengers are left wing. I gave a lot of interviews when I was running for governor, and I said many of the same you're saying right now.
Yeah.
And I pick up the newspaper, and it's a completely different human being they were talking to. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
There was a poll I saw not long ago. 61% of Democrats believe Republicans are racist / bigoted / sexist.
Wow.
Only 30% of Republicans feel the same way about Democrats. 83% of Black Democrats believe that Donald Trump is a racist.
Yes.
This is a guy who supports school choice. He gave us the most secure border than we've had probably in American history. The reason that's important is because there was a study done by the U.S. Civil Rights Commission, and it found that because of the presence of illegal alien labor, there are 1 million fewer Black people working than would otherwise be the case, and that illegal alien labor puts downward pressure to the tune of $2,000 per year on the salaries of people living in the inner city. So closing the border disproportionately benefits Black people. This is a guy who expanded what are called opportunity zones. These are distressed areas in the inner city, lowering taxes, lowering regulations in order to spark economic activity. Best economy ever for Black people. He put funding for historically Black colleges on a permanent basis for 10 years. No one ever done that before. This may sound like just symbolic, but the first Black heavyweight champion is a guy named Jack Johnson. He was heavyweight champion from 1905 to 1915, if I'm not mistaken. And he was arrested and tried and thrown in jail for something called violating the Mann Act, M-A-N-N. Essentially, he had a white girlfriend and transported her across state lines, which was illegal. Thrown in jail for that. A left-wing documentarian named Ken Burns and the actor Sylvester Stallone of Rocky approached George W. Bush to have them pardon Jack Johnson. He's now, of course, dead.
Yeah.
And W didn't do it. They approached Obama. Obama didn't do it. Trump did. Trump also pardoned a woman named Alice Johnson, who got a very long but nonviolent drug sentence for, I think it was almost 20 years. And he commuted her sentence. No one else had done that before. So you look at all the things that Donald Trump did that benefited Black people. And if this dude is a racist, he needs to go back to racism school.
Yeah.
Yet, when I tell people this, it doesn't seem to matter.
It's the feelings. It's the emotive.
I'll give you another example. I have a very good friend. His name is Will. That is his real name. And I've known him for over 40 years. I was very close with my late brother, Kirk. But when I got married years ago, I chose Will over my brother to be the best man at my wedding. That's how close we were. And Will has a son with special needs. His son is named Jesse. Jesse's middle name is my first name. My name is Lawrence with a U. His middle name is Lawrence with a U. That's how close we were. He is convinced that Donald Trump mocked a disabled reporter.
Oh, gosh.
You know the story.
I know this one.
The guy who he allegedly mocked is a reporter at the time. He was with the New York Times. Named Serge Kovaleski. And Serge Kovaleski has some sort of ailment, which gives him an atrophied arm, kind of like this.
Yes.
But he doesn't shake like this. And the reason he came up in the news is because Donald Trump, shortly after he got elected, was talking about the fact that he said there were several Muslims who were cheering the fall of the towers on 9/11. Well, because Trump is Trump, every word he says, they fact check it, and no one could find any evidence that this happened. So Trump produced an article written by this guy where he said he observed people cheering the fall of the walls of the Twin Towers. So reporters approached the reporter and asked him about the story, and he began to retreat from the story. I'm not quite sure I saw that many. I'm not sure they were Muslim. I'm not sure. So Donald Trump was at one of his rallies. I mean, the man is a stand-up comic.
Yes.
And he said, and they approached him. He went, I don't know. I don't remember.
Yep. I remember this.
And so the story was Donald Trump is mocking a disabled reporter. By the way, interesting, Kovaleski never even said he mocked me.
Mm-hmm.
Other people said it. And I sent my friend a 3-page letter linking a website called Catholics for, the number 4, Trump is still up, showing Trump using the same gesture to mock himself, to mock an able-bodied general. Donald Trump uses that gesture, and he wasn't mocking his disability. He was mocking his retreat from the story.
Yes.
3-page letter with that link. My friend, by the way, is brilliant. Perfect score on his SAT, close to a perfect score on his LSAT. That's how bright he is.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter. And I said, Will, what makes you think I would vote for somebody if he mocked a disabled person? What do you think of me?
Mm.
It didn't matter, Zuby. And I learned something. Once you hate Donald Trump, no evidence is going to make you unhate him.
Yes.
Another example. Another reason Donald Trump is perceived to be a racist because he allegedly said there were good Nazis and bad Nazis on both sides in Charlottesville. He did no such thing. He was talking about the issue of whether there should be a Confederate monument in the public square.
Yes. I managed to change my mom's mind on this one by showing her the longer clip because she had fallen for it.
Well, Jake Tapper, one of the lead guys on CNN,
Yeah.
2 years after the fact said, you know what? I went back and looked at the tape.
Yep.
And Donald Trump was saying there are good people and bad people on both sides of the issue about whether there should be a Confederate monument in the public square.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he even said, and I'm not talking about the white nationalists and neo-Nazis because they should be condemned totally.
Yes.
Michael Smerconish is a weekend host on CNN. 2 years later, somebody calls his radio show and says, you got that wrong. And Smerconish admitted, I went back, I looked at the tape, and you're right. After Tapper said this, Joe Biden goes on CNN 2 or 3 days later and says it again. And Zuby, nobody said, Jake Tapper, my colleague down the hall, he just now clarified it. They didn't say a word.
No.
And Biden still says it. He gave a speech before the United Nations and said it again, which is, this is why I decided to run for office. I wasn't going to run until, who said there's good people and bad people on both sides. So I decided to get into the race. He's still, if Donald Trump is that bad, do you have to make stuff up?